Hello, I'm Don Chioffi, and welcome to another edition of Straight Talk. My apologies on behalf of COVID and any other calamity that's hit the United States in the last 6 months. I decided early on, with all of the confusion, to out of concern for safety, to just put this in abeyance. But we've come a long way. And it's also political season, as you know, and having a great affinity for political discussion. Here we are back again, and it's my privilege today to talk with and to welcome an independent candidate for governor of the state of Vermont. And we're not really interested in a whole mess of controversy. I want to tell you that he can do his own bio, and I encourage you to look at his biographical sketch, which PEG TV will be hosting him on. And we won't waste time going through his many credentials because he has plenty of them. But he's a conservationist, and in the state of Vermont, that's certainly critical and important to all of our residents here in the state of Vermont. He's been a firearm safety instructor, and he has hosted and produced outdoor TV for better than 20 years. So he's no stranger to all of the beauty that we want to protect in Vermont. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome Kevin Hoyt. Kevin?
Thank you, Don.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And since we know that we've both been tested, that handshake is certainly approved. Kevin, in order to get started this morning, I think the best thing to do, really, since the importance to the people of the state of Vermont is very simple with you sitting here today, to me anyway, as a host. Not just who you are and what you've accomplished, but the fact that just a hardworking man who has some solutions that he thinks would work for the state of Vermont takes the time, makes the effort, and the extreme hard work to run for a statewide office in any state, especially a state as rural and spread out as Vermont is, says a lot to me about your character. We all sit and complain. Most of us do, and we complain at bars and grills and barbecues and here and there and everywhere. But there aren't too many of us that would take on the task of running for governor of the state of Vermont. And for that alone, I commend you. And because of that, I want to start by asking you very simply what it is. Say what 3 or 4 or 5 things that are going on in this state that you feel are wrong, that you may have a solution to, encourage you to run for this position. And take it away.
Take it away, Kevin. Well, I guess I should start by claiming a little guilt, because just like you and everybody watching out there, most of the people, I successfully avoided politics my entire life, right? I ran from it. So I think really it came down to gun rights was a big issue for me, and I want to be able to afford to live in the state that I love, that my family's called home since the early 1600s and a long time before it was called Vermont. So I think the opioid crisis is the biggest issue that we face, not only as Vermont but as a nation. I'm tired of talking about that. I have proven policy that can not only save lives and money, but I think it comes with a tremendous return on investment that'll take Vermont years and years into the future. Education reform, we got gun issues, we got green energy, we got higher taxes. We could complain a lot, and a lot of us do, I guess. But it got to the point in my life where, again, I can live anywhere that I want. I'm a world traveler. I've been blessed with that, and but I choose Vermont, and I need a home to come back to. So I've, I guess, devoted the last 30 years of my life to conservation, and I'm a hunter education instructor, a firearm safety instructor, conservationist, humanitarian from the beginning. And I'm concerned about Vermont on every level, but again, our natural resources, I think those are important. That's about all we have here in Vermont, so I want to highlight that to the rest of the world. And economic growth and development's another big one, which I'm going to get through our opioids. And I should talk about, I don't know if you're going to ask me questions or if I'm just supposed to talk here as far as my policy. But my opioid policy, again, I'd like to start treating this portion of Vermonters as a sick part of society rather than a criminal part. And we can use this by utilizing existing money, so I'm not going to ask for any more of your money. I know you guys are tapped out as Vermonters. So we can basically just restructure it and take existing money from incarceration and law enforcement and put it right into prevention and treatment. And that's something that's worked for other nations. Portugal was one of the lead countries that I followed. I think Holland did the same thing. And again, in Portugal's cases, heroin, for instance, they've reduced heroin usage by 75%. They've cut overdoses by 85%. Again, this is a real pandemic, a real situation, again, not just for Vermont, but for everybody. And by doing this, by giving the treatment there, again, I'm thinking about your everyday user on the street. I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for those people. They're Vermonters too. They're our friends and neighbors, and I'm really disgusted watching them die over and over, and I'm sick of watching our politicians just talk about it and do nothing. So again, when they want help, I want to be able to give them help instantly. I don't want to say that you're going to have to come up with $700 or wait 3 weeks for a bed. I want that available. When we find one of these people, falling out in a steward's bathroom, for instance, I think that demands immediate rehab. And when I say rehab, I'm talking about something that we've never seen before in Vermont or even in the country, maybe a few spots. But we're talking about a minimum of a 3-month rehab, not a simple 28-day detox, and we put them right back into the same circumstances and environment. I want to give them real rehabilitation with mental health therapy. In the long run, if you stay for the full 18 months, that's 1.5 years of your life, it actually comes with job training. It actually comes with aftercare where we have sober living, and we can transition these people again back to successful, worthy parts of our society. And again, it's proven now through Portugal and other places. Right now, Vermont State, we're losing, our numbers grow by 5 or 6%. I think our death rate is around 17 per 100,000. And even a lot of people deal with addiction, whether it's food or sex or jobs or whatever it is. So this isn't just limited to opioids and heroin, but I think that mental health piece is really, really important. And then another part of that, I guess, is jobs. As everybody knows, our jobs right now are kind of scarce in Vermont. Our businesses are in trouble and we need something. So again, under this policy, we're going to have these prevention and treatment centers all across the state. I'm talking about hundreds of facilities. So I'm going to need contractors and plumbers and electricians and therapists and doctors and nurses, and it's an instant job for the people. And then once that's established, if you can envision this 2 or 3 years from now, where we have a working, successful program to fight opioids, New Hampshire doesn't, Massachusetts doesn't, New York doesn't, and of course, this is all covered by health care. So I think that's the money, again, the return. Something we don't talk about in politics in Vermont very often is the return on investment. Right. And the reason they don't talk about it is because it's not there until now. So again, I'm pro 2A, I'm pro Constitution and anti-corruption. As the governor, I don't pass legislation, so my hands are kind of tied with the bad policy, but I do control all the money. So that gives me a giant lever to try to hopefully steer things in the right direction. And I know one of the first things that I'd be doing, I can appoint committees and have investigations. So I'd like to see a 5-year audit on state spending and elections with accountability. There's another missing word from politics. So overall, I think the the scandals that we found in Bennington statewide, I think we can shave billions, that's with a B, of dollars off of our yearly budget. And frankly, we have to. We're living in an unsustainable system, so we have to change that.
You know, obviously, it's quite a bit to chew on when you talk about the whole of state government. And in a gubernatorial race, of course, you know, you're going to get questions along the way. You'll get questions on every subject from A to Z, and
Right.
it's sometimes hard for people to focus in on what the key points are. But I mean, being able to afford to live in this state right now is probably one of the biggest considerations that most people have. And I mean,
Right.
we've had, and I'm sure you've heard and experienced the outflow and the outmigration from this state by people that just
Right.
simply can't afford the property taxation and the other tax loads that the state is putting on them. It's tough. So, I mean, how do you solve that
Well,
kind of a problem? It's a pretty big problem.
The last number I saw, again, was, had to be 6 or 8 months ago, and it was 39,000 Vermonters have fled because we can no longer afford the high cost of living. And my plan is to reduce that high cost of living, and I'm going to give you some more magic words that we don't hear in politics, but it's tax breaks and it's tax cuts. And as governor of Vermont, I'm going to let you guys, the people, keep a little bit of your money, because I think you'll probably spend it a little more wisely than our government has been. You look at the school budget alone, about 85% of our taxes goes to the school budget. And this year, because of the COVID, we ran $39 million. I laugh because it's so outrageous. $39 million over budget. And our current governor is already talking about another $60 million to start school again this fall and take us into next year. So right there, we're looking at almost $90 million, and we never had school. I think there's an issue with accountability as far as the education versus indoctrination. I have a problem with core curriculum. I have a problem with the teachers union. There's a lot of things that I'd like to look at, review, and hopefully revamp again for Vermont. If you look at our cost per student, the numbers don't meet. We've got some of the highest cost per student in the country, yet our test results are some of the lowest. So
Yeah,
I believe in local education for Vermont students.
shouldn't the cost be proportional to the product output? I mean,
You would think so, and it's funny because a lot of people turn this again into a left, right, or Democrat, Republican, and I've spent a couple of years with some major scandals looking, for the good guys, if you will, and I'm not sure if we don't have just one big deep state. And I've never been in politics. Again, I'm a professional television guy. I'm a deer hunter, and when things get bad enough, I felt like I had no choice but to get into this game. And essentially, it's because it's my duty as an American. I guess I love my rights, my freedoms, but with rights comes responsibility. And the same Constitution that gives us these rights gives us the responsibility to defend them. And I think the Constitution, especially here in Vermont, has not only been abused, but it's been trampled on. And I'd like to go back to following that Constitution and applying equality, whether it's the justice system, right down through to everybody. And again, when I say equality, it doesn't matter if you're a construction worker or a cop or a politician. When we catch these people in criminal activities, I think there should be accountability.
well, let's hone in a little bit on what you talked about a little bit about before, is that I've heard a lot of criticism of our present governor in terms of what he promised and then what he delivered. And there's always you can call it an excuse, some people would call it a reason. I think it's probably a little bit of both, that he has to deal with a completely Democratic legislature.
Right.
And he's in an almost impossible position now, but a lot of people that I've talked to think that he's gone a little bit too far overboard on the side of placating the opposition. And whether it's just to stay in office or whatever, one has to wonder. But the bottom line is, what, as a progressive, or as a progressive independent, because you are running as an independent,
Right.
which, and I've kind of determined and made a quick judgment right here, just sitting talking to you, that you do have a more independent, say, what do you want to call it? I guess a more independent view of politics rather than a total ideological stance on one side or the
I
other.
think I have conservative policies, that's fair to say, right? And I like the title Independent Republican for the Common Sense Party, because again, we just talked about my opioid policy, and to be honest, that's kind of Democrat leaning, right? I want policy for the people for a change. So I think that's the difference. I want some of my policies can be considered Republican, some of them can be considered Democrat, and I think it's that line. Most of I live in Vermont, so most people that I know are Democrats. They're liberal by nature, and I think that's us as Vermonters, as being tolerant and accepting. And I think we're one of the best peoples on the world. Again, being blessed with world travel, I've seen it. So I love Vermonters. I think that's really what makes us special. But I don't think when we say we're against the Democrats or the liberals, it's your average Vermont Democrat that we're talking about. I think it's the criminals that we have in charge. And when you started that conversation talking about why we elected the current governor, I think the layman's term you're looking for was turncoat. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to speak for you, Don. But we elected him. I elected him and voted for him because he told me he was going to keep our firearms safe. And again, maybe I'm showing my more conservative side. That's why I vote every year. My firearm freedoms are important to me, and I don't think it's just conservatives and Republicans. I think it's Vermonters as a whole. I think wildlife and this beautiful natural resources and our firearms and this culture and way of life, that's our core. That's what makes us Vermonters. So
Well, how do you
think it's a
reconcile
bipartisan.
that? How do you reconcile the fact that we are probably one of, if not the most safe state in the Union in terms of gun safety
Because of
and in
those
terms of
firearms.
gun deaths,
Right.
and yet, because we are an open carry state, and yet the progressives and the ultra-liberals in our legislature want to restrict our firearms? It doesn't,
Right.
it just, it doesn't even matter on the, doesn't even matter on the safety scale. It matters on the intelligence scale. It's just illogical.
It does seem that
It's
way.
illogical to oppose something that produces those good of results in your state.
I think a lot of that we can blame on the media. And, we use bicycle accidents as example. If every time a kid got hit on a bicycle, that's all we talked about, we put it in the headline news and put it all over every network for a month at a time, we'd probably ban bicycles too. If you look at statistics, hunting, again, I'm probably one of the only campaign guys, candidates you'll ever see listed as a firearms advocate. I've devoted 30 years of my life to both firearm safety instruction and again conservation education, and I think it's just knowledge. When you say these people are ignorant, I don't want to use that in a bad way. It just means that they don't know. They haven't been told the truth, right? And guns are designed to kill things. That's the truth, and they are deadly, and that's the truth. What you have to look at when we're talking about, again, overall gun deaths, you're looking at about 32,000 gun deaths a year, and that's all gun deaths. But you have to remove suicides from that. That's about 22,000 of them. Now you're looking at an average of 10,000 deaths a year. You watch the news. A lot of this gun deaths occur from bad guys. If you come out of a bank armed and shooting at police, and you're killed, that's called a gun death. Or maybe it's armed citizens defending themselves. So I think we can account for at least half of that 10,000 being the good guys. So now you're talking about 5,000 gun deaths a year for the entire country. And considering that we have 300 million guns in this country, we should celebrate how incredibly safe guns are. If you compare them to anything else, I mean, we get to deer camp, for instance, in a high-speed vehicle, and we use knives at the kitchen table, and we're never going to be able to protect ourselves from ourselves. But I think because of the hundreds of thousands of volunteer hunter education instructors like myself, incidents are at an all-time low right now. You'd never know that reading the local banner or looking at the thing. But one of the things that I guess the pro or the anti-gun people need to realize is it has never worked in the entire history of gun control. Whenever we've used it anywhere in the entire world, every time, it's not even a guess anymore, crime rates go up. So I'm wondering how many viewers out there, how many citizens and voters really want to advocate for higher crime rates, because that's what you're advocating for when you advocate for gun control.
Well, Kevin, isn't it a fact that your own logic and your own sensibility and your own intelligence would dictate to you that the least vulnerable place in the world or in the country to be going and trying to commit crimes with guns would be a state that has an open carry law and a whole mess of people that have rifles and guns?
Yeah, and it is a common sense. Again, if we were gonna be outlaws today, right, we're gonna become robbers and murderers for a living. And I can simply ask you, do you want to go to Massachusetts, where someone has already decided that the people don't have the right to defend themselves, or do you want to stay here in Vermont, where our men, women, and children all know how to use firearms and often do? It's a no-brainer. Of course we're going to go to Massachusetts. It's the same thing when you see these tragedies, and they are horrible tragedies, whether it's in a movie theater or a school or wherever it is. It's always soft targets.
Gun-free zones.
Gun-free zones, right. One of the policies that I've been pushing, again, as a citizen for this will be the 16th year, is putting hunter education in the school system. I've gotten to gun control debates before where I've talked to people, and they compare it to driving. If you got to be 16 years old and have to have a license and permit to drive a car, you should do the same with a firearm. Now, I don't believe in making people qualify for their constitutional rights to start with, but you can't argue with the fact that more trained people would make it a safer thing. And even though we were really safe and we just determined that it's safe to have guns and own and use guns here in Vermont, we can still do better. We should always try to do better. So I think, again, by mandating this as part of our standard school curriculum, we would have more safe, responsible gun owners, right? So I can't argue with them that more trained people would be safer, and I want to put it in our
Well, I'm
schools.
sure the Fish and Wildlife Department would back up your statements, because
They do.
they feel the same way, and they don't want people in the woods hunting unless they
Right.
have proven that they're capable of safe operation of a firearm.
Right.
And we have many, many, many courses in the state that provide that. But the key issue here is not just guns, it's constitutional rights.
Right.
And I mean, as soon as you start to erode constitutional rights, start put qualifications on them, then there's essentially, isn't there no limit to which other constitutional rights you could start to put limits on?
Yes, I think that's correct. In fact, I think we're seeing that now. It's not just the Second Amendment, but our First Amendment's in a lot of trouble. And you're starting to really see that now on social media. But they have rewritten the Constitution. We found out, again, here in Vermont State, in order to hold office per the Constitution, you have to take an oath. This is a written, signed and sealed, bonded oath to be kept at the governor's office. And we actually found out that that doesn't happen in Vermont anymore, which I'm not sure how they can even say they hold office, but that was actually removed in 1994. We went through and basically had to take all the gender specific, the hims and hers, out of the Vermont Constitution to make it theirs and them. And when they did that, though, they actually rewrote and removed the requirement from our election laws and our Vermont Constitution. And not many people know that. I mean, that was never, they
Well,
never
was
got
that,
permission.
Was that what you'd call a sleight of hand?
That's a sleight of hand, and you see those happen all the times. In fact, one of the big things right now, a lot of people are upset with Act 250. I am too. I think it's got to be restructured. And they know that. So what they're doing is they're putting our green energy at the back end of the Act 250 law. And that's one of the problems we see a lot with legislators. It's not a simple yes or no on this issue. This is the main issue. But here, look, he yelled at me for this, by the way.
Yeah,
Anybody
I
watching?
I did.
His phone went
I'm
off.
sorry. I made the fatal mistake of not turning my phone off.
But no, I think the time is now to change all of this. I think the people are waking up at an alarming rate. We know whether we're talking about election fraud or the embezzlement or targeting citizens. There's a lot of issues that face Vermonters, and I'm not the only guy that feels this way. We're just made to feel that way. And again, I think the media is partially controlled. You can find connections between all of our politicians, high-ranking politicians, and the news outlets in here in Vermont. And I think we're being fed a lot of misinformation. You know, when you hear the term fake news, a lot of people, another controversial subject, people are confused. Does that mean what they're telling us isn't true? Well, not necessarily. I think everything they report on has a certain twist, but at the same time, it's the stuff that they're not reporting on.
Well, let me focus for a minute,
Sure.
because we're sitting here in a studio, which you,
Right.
by your own admission, have said this is a beautiful studio.
It is.
It's the first time you've been in the Rutland studio of PEG TV.
Correct.
So let me put a plug in, unsolicited, but true.
For cable access.
Here we are. Here we are. This is the essence of
It
the
is.
First Amendment.
It
Why?
is.
Because when people ask, and they will, they'll ask, who's Kevin Hoyt? What does he say? And some of your detractors will say, well, he's the guy that did this, and he did this, and he thinks this, and he thinks that. Here we are sitting right here. You want to see who Kevin Hoyt is? You've heard his words. They're unfiltered. This is the only media in the state of Vermont, PEG TV, that is totally unfiltered, and you have the right, within the bounds of decorum, to say anything you want, but your words. Nobody can put a spin on them, or
Right.
nobody can twist them. Nobody can make you into somebody that you're not. This is something that to be really, really proud of, especially in this day and age, when social media can be twisted, when the mainstream media can print what they want or not print what they don't want people to know.
Right. Well, that's one of the major problems that I'm having right now as a candidate is, again, getting your name out there, getting my messages out there. And I think I'm the candidate they don't want you guys to know about, and I know the reason why. So I hope they, look into it. I hope they look into every candidate. And that's the problem, I think, with society and Vermonters. They tell us something and we just believe them. My mom told me a long time ago to question authority, and that's never been more appropriate than in 2020. And I hope people question my authority and everybody else's authority, and likewise with my policies. I've always been open to constructive criticism. If you guys think that I'm wrong, if you want to prove me wrong, do it in a friendly, civil manner, and I welcome you. And likewise, if you can take some of my great policies and make them better, then please, that's an open invitation. But I think public access television and radio that's the reason it's here. That's the foundation. Right now, the state, the man, if you will, and the media are doing a really good job of avoiding me because they don't want my name out there. And again, that's part of, I say, the rigged elections from start to finish. They have control of everything. So I do appreciate the opportunity from you and from this access station, because this is public television. This is TV made by you guys. It's not restricted in content, and you are getting it first person. So I recommend it.
See, one of the drawbacks you have is in the introduction, I told the audience here that you're 50 years old, and you don't look more than 30.
Well, I appreciate
Maybe
that.
And you probably tried to make yourself look a little older by wearing the beard and the mustache.
I did. This is
if
like,
you shave that off, you'd only look like 20. But half a century old is that's quite a bit of experience in and of itself.
that's it. Old enough to
So-
know what I want and young enough to get it. This is actually like 4 years worth of growth, so I don't grow a lot of facial hair, but I think
and
that's
strong enough to work
that's-
hard for it.
And that's it, and that's part of my family heritage. Again, the Hoyt males specifically, we just live a long time. So
Well, PEG TV gives me the opportunity and gives this program the opportunity. And it is the program called Straight Talk, and that's what you get. You get straight talk from real people. And we ask the tough questions. We've asked Kevin the tough questions, and he'll be asked a lot more. But the beauty of this program is that what you see is what you get. And the exposure is important because it's a tough race for governor. And I want to thank you for being here. We don't endorse candidates, but I want to thank you
Thank you.
for the effort that you're making, Kevin.
I appreciate it. I look forward to standing for Vermont, with you for Vermont.
Very good. See you next time on Straight Talk.